Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second half. You've probably heard the term hustle culture used to describe the glorification of work, the urge to work harder, to reach maximum capacity, to fulfill all the goals, no matter at what cost, working 50 to 60 plus hours a week in a full-time job or working a 9 to 5 with a side hustle or two. People who are part of the hustle culture say they have increased productivity and higher motivation, leading to professional success. But along with that rise and grind mentality comes some negative effects: stress and anxiety, a lack of work and life balance, and complete burnout. Anti-hustle culture is about people being against the whole idea of hustling, and I am all here for it. With me today is Shawn Fink, a business strategist and courage coach who offers fierce business strategy and soulful support to women entrepreneurs who want to brave up and release fear and self-doubt so that they can grow, up level, or pivot their business for greater joy and revenue. She's also a writer and nature lover and mom of tween teen girls. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Appreciate it. So tell me about the anti-hustle culture. I remember a time where it was so impressive to hear someone say how busy they were and how they were working on all of these projects and they didn't have time to do anything other than hustle because they were having so many side hustles. When did this switch happen to the anti-hustle mindset?
Yeah, well, I can't say for sure that I know when, and I don't even know that it has completely switched. I think people now more than ever want an anti-hustle life and mindset, but I think still people are really caught up in the hustle, and it's because it's really a hard habit to break, and certainly the systems that that our country, our world is made of, makes it kind of like necessary to hustle. I actually wrote a book years ago called Savoring Slow. So my own mentality has always been more kind of leaning towards slow, and just not getting caught up in busyness. But yeah, I think one of the things that we've noticed over the last few years since the pandemic and COVID and lockdown, especially from lockdown, is people realized that they had more priorities than they had prior. Before COVID and lockdown, everybody was like busy, hustle, getting things done, going off and doing this and that. And then the lockdown allowed for space to tend to yourself, space to, bake bread. There was just a lot of time to do things that people really just hadn't done before. And so since COVID and, returning to work, we're seeing a lot more conversations in workplaces around mental health, burnout, exhaustion, and, quiet quitting. People are like, I'm just not going to give, the 150%. I'm going to give just enough. And I work with entrepreneurs. So, and it's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to, especially if your business is still in that growth stage, to, keep things afloat. You're kind of in a survival mode. So you can get really caught up in the hustle of it all. But I know that everybody that I talk to doesn't want that. They didn't start a business because they wanted to, have like a 9 to 5 life. They started a business because they wanted freedom. And so hustle, I try to really work on concepts with my people that is power, taking impact moves. I call them brave yes power moves, because it's all about, how can I make the most impact with the least amount of energy?
Right. Yes. I almost envision like, someone on a treadmill and they're just going and going and going, right? Like a hamster, just turning the wheel, trying to get somewhere, but not using their time productively, I guess. So how can entrepreneurs and women still achieve success, but with, more purposeful time and energy rather than that, hustle
The
and
hustle and
bustle?
go. Yeah. It's funny. That your question reminds me of years ago, probably 10 years ago or so. I had another business. It was called the Abundant Mama Project. And I did a lot of, at that time, especially, I was doing a lot of study in Buddhism, and I had a Zen teacher. And, I remember specifically asking her, well, how do I be successful and go after my dreams and hit all my goals and still, live this like Zen life? And she was just like, one thing at a time, right? Like one thing at a time. And I think that's what we forget, especially in entrepreneurship. We forget that there's this here and now, and that we can focus on the here and now. And at the same time, one thing at a time to get to the next step, to get to the next level. And I do think that it's a balance and a struggle. And I don't think that I have it figured out. And I don't think, that I'm ever going to coach somebody perfectly to get it figured out. But it's a practice, right? It's kind of like balance. We're never going to achieve balance. Balance is something that we have to work at constantly, every day. How am I going to have balance today? Well, it's kind of like, it's that. How am I going to focus on what is needed and important, and also not, get caught up in the shoulds, the shiny objects, all of that, can add to our busyness, because we do, it's everywhere, like what we could be doing. I mean, self-care wise, travel, what you can do to your house. I mean, you can really get caught up. You can really get caught up.
I think also too, and I always bring it back to social media, but I feel like social media can make you feel that way too. Like it can kind of, because you're constantly seeing what other people are doing, and people are constantly selling themselves and hustling online. That probably plays a big role too, doesn't it?
It does. And, and it's a necessary evil, right? It's like we have to market our work, especially as women, women entrepreneurs who are not going to have that upper edge. So we do need to put ourselves out there more, even, which is work that I do with my clients. And, but it's all about, two things. You're referencing the consuming. We have to be conscious consumers and really be careful with the messaging that's coming through, particularly the messaging that is, there's a lot of psychological selling and marketing tactics, which I don't buy into at all in my work. And I think it's probably because of my aversion to it in the market and seeing it in my feed all day long.
Right.
And I have just, you have to kind of get to a point where you can see it and then not see it. Just like, I don't need that. I don't need that. I need to focus on what is really important and what I know, will work for my business. But just to mention social media, I did actually 2 weeks ago, almost 2.5 weeks ago, took all social media off of my phone, because I was just noticing, I was just scrolling, for random, it wasn't like I was not doing what I needed to do. I just was scrolling too much. So I took it off. And I have actually noticed a really big difference in my focus on my own business and my own creative projects, because, and I really do it comes back to I'm not as distracted by all these messages that are flooding into my brain.
Right.
All these ideas of the things that I could be doing. I'm just staying my path. Now I'm still using social media. I still use it on my computer. I still post, it's not like I'm not using it. I just took it off my phone.
Right. That's actually a really good tip too for people. You mentioned.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that I didn't take Instagram off because I didn't know how to do stories any other way. So it was the only little problem in my little plan there. But I don't really scroll Instagram, so it's okay.
Right. You mentioned earlier some really good advice about taking things one step at a time. What does that look like for you?
Yeah.
If you could give me an example.
Well, first of all, I'm somebody who will always have multiple projects going because I'm creative. I'm a creative soul. I have, this project over here and I'm writing 2 books right now, but I can only write 1 book at a time and I can only work on 1 project at a time. And so I think it really begins with really knowing your vision and knowing your priorities. And then really getting really granular with what those look like. Because again, we get really caught up in the shoulds and the possibility of what everybody else is doing. And maybe I should be doing that too. But if you can really just stick to your goals and your vision and work diligently on each one until they're done, each done. And yes, absolutely. Getting support to people who can do the things that you can't do, or getting support to do the things that you really can do, but shouldn't be doing.
Don't want to.
Or don't wanna.
Yeah.
Obviously that's having systems in place that, this is what I do, this, time blocking. I do more like a project blocking type thing. Like, okay, I'm working on a quiz right now for my website. It's quiz block time. I'll just work on everything related to the quiz, and just giving myself that time, that gift of time to really be able to dive in and focus on that and not feel like I also have to be checking my email and getting on social media and responding to people. And, oh yeah, that's right, I needed to do this other thing. And, just work on the thing, get the thing done. Then you can move on to the next thing.
I know, it sounds easy enough.
I know it's not,
but it's not.
Well, I tell people a lot of people are getting diagnosed with ADHD in the older years, but in recent years, last couple of years. And I always say, I just don't think our brains are meant for this amount of information that is coming at us. I mean, it is a flood of information. And it really is, it is creating a lot of focus, distractions and focus issues. So we do need to give ourselves grace that we don't have, we weren't meant for this. So go slow, allow yourself time to process and contemplate and give that space, which, is, I think, what I've seen with just taking all the social off my phone. Like, I'm not feeling that flood. I'm getting a little bit more clarity from it.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the slow living concept too, right? So can you tell me what are some healthy ways to integrate hustle into your work life?
I mean, I think the bottom line is I like to work with really ambitious entrepreneurs. I'm not going to lie. Like, I want the hustlers, and then I want to help them slow down. It's like, I think that, a business, and I'm, one of the people, I talk about how entrepreneurs really want what I call the entrepreneur freedom trifecta. It's space for time, right? Time freedom, but it's also space for identity and creative passion or creative expression freedom. And in a business, especially in the work that I do, I want time to be able to write. I want time to be able to create. I want time to be able to focus on the things that I love that drew me to the work that I do. And so, the number one thing I think that when we're thinking about hustle is like, are you doing what brings you joy? Focusing on really what brings you joy and focusing on what really works in your business. And doubling down on those things as opposed to all the tactics that might work. We can, again, we get really caught up in that. And that's what creates the busyness. It's like, well, I got to create this funnel and I've got to get this, I've got to put 10 social media posts out there, I've got to hit this content strategy. And, like, if it's bringing you joy and it's working, just double down on that. And a lot of my work helps entrepreneurs really identify those strengths, both within themselves and then in their business, so that you can just really have that impact instead of working on things that aren't in your strengths. Then you're it's like trying to fix what's broken versus working with what's already really there. And that can really elevate, because it's such a relief to focus on what's working instead of what's not. It really is. It's like, like I can just do what I'm good at. Like, yes, yes. I would, a good example of that is video. You're a great example of somebody who can do video very well. I don't do video. It's just not, I can be on video, but I don't produce it. And that's because I'm a writer. I was a writer to start, and I'm a writer now, and I'm through and through a writer. And so I just own that as my strength, rather than trying to hustle and grind to learn video, put up video, get all the reels. I might do one from time to time, but I'm not going to master it. I'm not going to make that my thing, because that would just add in so much more hustle for me. And you can feel it. I think, that's another thing I work with my clients on. Like, can you feel the friction when you're doing something, and that's going to feel like hustle. You're going to, avoiding those if you can, offloading them to somebody else, or just maybe you don't need to do them at all. Focusing on your priorities, again, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier. If you know what is very important and you are sticking to it, you won't feel like hustle. It'll feel like important, right? As opposed to just trying to fill your calendar or your schedule 9 to 5, but maybe I only have 2 priorities today, and I do the 2 priorities, and then I get to go and read my book in my hammock. That to me is nice. That's the life, right?
Yeah.
But definitely. I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs who are still trying to shift out of that corporate mindset, are going to fill that time slot, 9 to 5 or whatever it is, 8 to 4, with I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then you get to the end of the day, you still don't feel like you've done enough. You still don't feel like you're there, you've arrived. And you wake up the next day with the same list. I mean, it's the same list every day, right? So why not really focus on, what's the big priorities? I call them the Brave Yes power moves in my work. And so what's the power move that's going to move the needle in my business that I can do today? And then I can go read, or, take a walk, or, do the dishes.
Or fold that laundry that's been forever.
Make another call about the kids' appointments.
So you work with a lot of women entrepreneurs.
I do. I work with.
Tell me how fulfilling that is for you.
Oh, I'm amazed that I get to do this work. I've been doing it for 10 years. Not all with entrepreneurs, but with women for the past 10 years. And it is very fulfilling. I love to help build and grow the person behind the business, and then the business itself. So I feel very fortunate. I work with mission-driven entrepreneurs. So they are, they have big dreams, big visions for how to heal the world, change systems. And I feel really honored that I get to help them do that, because not a lot of people want to listen to that. They want to just kind of go back to conventional business stuff. And I don't really do conventional. I really like the unconventional.
I love that. And so do you also work with them to sort of figure out what their strengths are and where they should focus their time?
Yeah, that's the first thing that we do. As soon as they sign up, they get a whole bunch of assessments that they have to take. And then we kind of pull out the strengths and their strengths there, and their passions, and what they're really good at. And then we start to kind of design their business and their business model around that. Because, if you don't know that, and most people don't really pay attention to that when they're building a business, you might build a business that doesn't really work for your personality, your strengths, and then now you're stuck in something that's not going to feel good, 5 years later.
Yeah. Well, tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, ShawnFink.com. That's SHAWN, since everybody kind of wonders about that. I'm also ShawnFink.com, and then I'm also on all the social medias. Usually it's Shawn _Brave Yes. But if you Google Brave Yes, you'll probably find me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you. Hope you have a nice, slow day.
I wish. I hope so.
I know.